I got the letter on a Monday. Thick paper. Heavy envelope. The kind of letter that makes your stomach turn before you even open it. It was from a law office in Asheville. I sat down at my kitchen table and read the first line 3 times. We regret to inform you that your Aunt Eleanor M. Wright passed away on April 2nd. I stopped breathing for a second. Aunt Ellie was gone. I hadn't seen her in years, not since Mom and I moved after the divorce. But I still remembered the smell of jasmine by her porch, the sound of her voice when she told me stories about our great-grandfather building that house with his bare hands. The letter said she left me the homestead. Just like that. I drove out that weekend. It took 6 hours. The closer I got to Maple Heights, the tighter my chest felt. When I pulled up the gravel driveway, the house looked smaller, older. The paint was peeling, the porch sagged, but it was still standing. It was still hers. Now, mine. I stepped out of the car, holding the manila envelope with the deed. The air smelled like pine and dust. No jasmine, those bushes had been torn out. Then I saw it. A yellow cat bulldozer parked on the edge of the yard. 2 guys in neon vests tearing up what used to be Eleanor's garden. "Hey!" I shouted. "What the hell are you doing?" The taller one turned, wiped sweat from his brow, and squinted at me. "Clearing for the expansion. HOA's building townhomes. Phase 1 starts Monday." "What HOA?" I said, walking fast toward them. "This is private property. I have the deed right here." He shrugged. "Talk to the office. We're just following orders. Get off my land." He looked at the other guy and grinned. "Right. Good luck with that." They didn't move. I didn't either. I stood there, fists clenched, watching them finish tearing out the last of my grandmother's rose bushes. I walked up to the porch, sat on the steps, and opened the envelope again. The deed was there. My name. Eleanor's signature. Notarized and dated. "This is mine," I whispered. But the land didn't feel mine. Not yet. Not with bulldozers in the yard and strangers tearing it apart. I didn't know exactly what I was up against. But in that moment, I knew 2 things. The fight had already started, and I wasn't leaving without a battle. She showed up just before sundown. I was on the porch, cleaning dried mud off my boots when a sleek black SUV crawled up the driveway like it owned the place. 3 people stepped out. 2 men in cheap blazers, and in the center, her. Margaret Ellison. She looked like she'd walked out of a courtroom drama. Burgundy blazer, flawless nails, sunglasses perched high even as the sun dipped behind the trees. She didn't walk, she glided. "You must be Eleanor's niece," she said, like she already hated me. Margaret Ellison. HOA president for Maple Heights. "We're here to discuss the property." I stayed seated. "It's not up for discussion." She gave me a paper-clipped folder. "You'll find that Eleanor signed a property transfer agreement with the HOA 2 years ago. It's all been processed." I flipped through it. Her signature was there, but something about it felt off. Too clean. Too straight. "I'll be staying on the property until I get legal clarity," I said. "This deed says it's mine." One of the board members shifted awkwardly. Margaret didn't blink. "You can fight this if you want. But I wouldn't recommend it." She stepped closer, voice low and syrupy. "Things get unpleasant for people who don't cooperate." My jaw clenched. "Is that a threat?" "A neighborly warning," she smiled. The taller guy, Phil or Frank, I think, added, "It's just procedure. No need to escalate." I stood up slowly. "Then we're done here." Margaret looked past me, scanning the house like she was assessing an investment. "You're in violation already," she said. Exterior paint is peeling, the porch steps aren't up to code, and that shed. She pointed toward the back, hasn't been inspected in years. It's been mine for 2 days. You'll receive formal notice tomorrow. They left like royalty retreating from the peasants. No goodbye, just engine growl and dust. I sat back down, heart racing. That wasn't just HOA posturing. That was a power move. She wanted me scared. Intimidated. Gone. That night, it started. A scraping sound woke me around midnight. I grabbed the flashlight and crept outside. Found nothing. But in the morning, both my rear tires were slashed clean through. I stared at the rubber flaps and laughed bitterly. Unpleasant, huh? I reported it to the sheriff's office. They said they'd keep an eye out. I went to the hardware store and bought a crowbar. Kept it under the bed. Just in case. Every creak in the floorboards after that made me flinch. Every parked car outside the gate made my skin crawl. But I wasn't leaving. Not for Margaret. Not for anyone. She wanted a fight? She'd just declared war. The attic smelled like mothballs and old wood. I pulled the chain on the single bulb and squinted at the mess Eleanor had left behind. Dusty boxes, yellowed newspaper stacks, and a trunk that looked older than both of us combined. Inside the trunk, I found them, her journals. The first one was dated 7 years ago. Neat cursive. Tidy lines. Eleanor's voice, sharp and stubborn, leapt off every page. They want it. But they'll never get it, not while I'm alive. My pulse jumped. The next few entries read like a battle log. Fines for grass length, threats about fence repairs, letters from the HOA citing unsightly structures. Margaret's name showed up over and over. I took the documents Margaret gave me, the ones she claimed proved Eleanor transferred the land, and drove straight to Jenna's office downtown. Jenna and I used to wait tables together in college, now she reviewed real estate titles for a living. Jesus, she muttered, flipping through the papers. You actually moved back? Apparently into a war zone. She held one sheet up to the light. This signature, it's off. Eleanor's writing was always tight and angular. This is looser, sloppier. See here? She pulled up a scan of Eleanor's signature from a tax document Eleanor had filed 6 years ago. Side by side, the difference was obvious. This one's forged, Jenna said, no hesitation. And look, this deed they submitted to the county? It contradicts the original title registered in 1989. Same parcel number, but no revocation of the first. There's a second deed? My throat tightened. Jenna nodded. The real one's buried under a quiet title filing from last year. They tried to overwrite it. Margaret? Jenna shrugged. She's listed as a trustee of the Maple Heights HOA Land Trust. Guess who filed the title change? I sat back in my chair. They stole it. Looks that way. You've got grounds for a legal challenge, if you want it. If I wanted it? They thought Eleanor was alone. That she'd die quietly and no one would notice what they'd done. But I noticed. Can I get copies of all of this? I asked. I'll print you everything. Be careful though. If this is as dirty as it looks, they won't go down easy. I took the folder in both hands, heart pounding. The paper felt heavier now. Real. I'm not going down either, I said. Jenna looked at me, serious. Then fight smart. I plan to. I stood. They think she died and took the truth with her. But I'm still here. I left her office with ghosts on my shoulders and evidence in my bag. And I wasn't scared anymore. The first notice was taped to my door in neon orange. Code violation, unapproved exterior maintenance. Fine, $400. The second came 2 days later. Unauthorized occupancy. Fine, $6,800. I laughed out loud when I read it. Unauthorized? I own this place. The laughter didn't last. By the end of the week, my mailbox was stuffed with envelopes from the HOA. Total fines, $7,200. No explanations, just codes and penalties and threats of lien filings. I walked straight to the HOA office that afternoon. Margaret wasn't there. A clerk with a tight bun and colder stare met me at the front desk. I need to speak with someone about these fines. All violations are processed automatically, she said without blinking. If you believe they're in error, you may appeal in writing within 30 days. I don't have 30 days. You're threatening me over made-up charges. Then I suggest you hire counsel. I stared at her. You enjoy working for her? She's very thorough. That night, I installed security cameras around the porch. By morning, the garden was gone. Flattened. Not a single flower left. Rose bushes, lavender, jasmine, all uprooted like they never existed. A crew was parked down the road, pretending they hadn't seen a thing. I dialed the sheriff's office, hands shaking. They tore up my property. Completely destroyed it. The dispatcher transferred me. A deputy finally picked up. That's a civil matter, ma'am. If you suspect vandalism, file a report. But if it's HOA authorized, we can't interfere. They don't own this land. Then take it up in court. Click. I stood in the yard, staring at bare soil and broken stems. Eleanor had planted that jasmine herself. 40 years ago. I went inside, grabbed my phone, and started taking pictures. The garden. The damage. The notices. The cameras. Every conversation I had, I logged. Times. Dates. Names. When a man in a truck stopped to measure my fence, I stepped outside and took his picture. What are you doing? I asked. He didn't answer. Just got in his truck and drove off. The next day, I got a fine for fence height inconsistency. I taped the latest notice on the fridge, right next to the deed. Margaret wasn't trying to scare me. She was trying to break me. But I wasn't folding. They wanted me gone because I was inconvenient. Because I was stubborn. Because I wasn't supposed to dig into Eleanor's life. But every time they pushed, I pushed harder. I wasn't going anywhere. They could bury the flowers. But not me. I sat in Caleb Matthews' office, fingers clenched around the file Jenna had printed. "You're sure this is everything?" he asked, flipping through the pages. "That's every deed, notice, fine, and forged signature I could find." He looked up, his expression tight. "They're trying to steamroll you. But if Eleanor's real deed holds, and I believe it does, we can stop them." I exhaled, tension pouring out of my shoulders. I didn't come here to roll over. Good. Because they won't either. He walked me through next steps: title dispute filing, cease and desist letters, preliminary injunction. "They'll push back hard," he warned. "They've probably buried themselves in policy. But forged documents? That's a felony." I smiled for the first time in weeks. "Then let's dig." That night, I stopped by Mrs. Langford's house. She'd lived across from Eleanor for decades. Her eyes lit up when she saw me. "Oh, I remember you. The shy one who used to climb the apple tree. Not that shy anymore." She handed me a box of cookies without asking. "They've been after your aunt's land since her husband passed. Margaret knocked on our door 4 times asking if we'd consider selling." Did anyone? Not a soul. We all knew what she was doing. A few days later, a man in overalls flagged me down while I was fixing the gate. "You Eleanor's niece?" I nodded. "Name's Hank. Lived here 40 years. Margaret tried this on me too, claimed my driveway crossed HOA lines. Threatened demolition. What happened? Found out she's got the city planner in her pocket. Got tired of fighting. Paid the fine." I leaned on the fence. "Did you keep the paperwork?" He pointed to his barn. "Still in a folder. You want copies, come by tomorrow." Word spread. Mrs. Tran offered to sign an affidavit about forged signatures she'd seen on another neighbor's complaint. Tommy, the kid who used to mow Eleanor's lawn, showed up with drone footage of the garden destruction. Each story added weight. Each voice chipped away at Margaret's control. One morning, I looked out at the porch and saw a note tucked in the mailbox. "Don't stop. We're with you." I held the paper in both hands, heart tight in my chest. For the first time since the letter arrived, I felt it, hope. Not just for justice. For something bigger. For the whole damn neighborhood. The panel behind the water heater looked off. A different shade, like it had been patched years ago. I pried at the edge with a screwdriver until it popped loose. A metal file cabinet sat wedged into the wall. No label, no dust, like Eleanor had tucked it there for someone to find, but only if they were looking hard enough. The top drawer stuck. I yanked until it gave with a screech. Inside. Folders, thick with paper. Yellowed edges. Legal headers. Her handwriting on sticky notes. The first folder held the deed. Not a copy. The original. Ink crisp, notary stamp intact, Eleanor's signature sharp and unmistakable. The name listed as beneficiary? Mine. Below that, letters. Typed, formal, on her lawyer's letterhead. Addressed to Margaret Ellison. Dated 2 years ago. This letter serves as a formal denial of any request or claim made by the Maple Heights HOA regarding the transfer or relinquishment of property located at 917 Sycamore Lane. Eleanor never agreed to anything. She said it loud and clear. I flipped to the next envelope. My hands shook. Inside, stapled to a memo marked confidential, a photocopy of a check. Made out to Gregory Ames. $10,000. Memo line, consulting, zoning evaluation. The signature? Margaret Ellison. I sat down on the concrete floor, heart pounding. Oh, Eleanor, you knew. She'd seen it coming. And she hadn't trusted anyone to fight for her while she was alive. But she trusted me enough to leave this behind. I pulled out my phone and started photographing everything. Page by page. Deed, letters, the check. Close-ups of signatures, dates, seals. By the time I finished, my fingers were numb and my chest felt like it had a fist wrapped around it. I called Caleb the moment I got upstairs. You're not going to believe what I just found. Try me. I have the original deed. Notarized. Uncontested. And letters from Eleanor's lawyer to Margaret denying any sale. You're kidding. I'm not done. There's a copy of a check. 10 grand from Margaret to a zoning official. Labeled, consulting. There was a pause. You sure it's not coincidence? Not when it's buried in a false wall. He whistled. Get me copies. We'll file a fraud claim before they finish breakfast. I looked out the window. Margaret's SUV was parked down the street again. She had no idea her game was over. I've got her, I said quietly. Dead to rights. The sun hit the porch just then, lighting up the old wood in gold. Proof. I finally had it. The courtroom smelled like dust and cold air. I sat stiff-backed, palms sweating on my lap while Caleb arranged our files at the table. "You ready?" he whispered. "No. But I'm here." "Good enough." Margaret strutted in like she owned the place. Hair perfect, blazer sharp, lips pursed in that permanent smirk. She didn't look at me, just nodded at her lawyer and crossed her legs like this was a social brunch. The bailiff called us to rise. I stood, knees trembling. When they called me to the stand, I kept my eyes forward. One step, then another. I took the oath with a dry mouth. "State your connection to the property in dispute," the judge said. "My aunt, Eleanor Wright, left it to me in her will. I hold the original deed." "Objection," Margaret's lawyer snapped. "There is a subsequent deed." Caleb stood before the judge could speak. "Your Honor, we have evidence that the subsequent deed is fraudulent." The judge looked down over his glasses. "Go on." Caleb handed over a folder. "This is the original, notarized title Eleanor Wright filed in 1989, never revoked. Alongside it are letters from her attorney, explicitly rejecting any transfer to the HOA." The judge skimmed the documents, expression unreadable. "And this," Caleb continued, pulling out the last sheet, "is a copy of a check written by Margaret Ellison to the city zoning official, $10,000, labeled as consulting, weeks before the forged deed appeared." The room went still. Margaret's eyes flicked to the paper, and for the first time, I saw her blink. The judge leaned forward. "Are you suggesting this document is forged?" "Yes," Caleb said. "And we have a handwriting expert to prove it. The signature doesn't match Eleanor Wright's legal records. We've also obtained a sworn affidavit from the official who notarized the original deed, but not the new one." Margaret stood up so fast her chair screeched. "This is slander," she shouted. "None of that proves anything." I stared at her from the witness stand. "No," I said, my voice steady. "This is justice." She pointed at me. "You're just bitter your aunt didn't." The judge slammed the gavel. "Ms. Ellison, sit down." Margaret's lawyer whispered frantically, trying to get her under control. The judge turned back to me. "You may step down." As I walked back to my seat, I passed her table. Her smirk was gone. Her hands shook. I sat down, exhaled, and looked at Caleb. He whispered, "That's what a turning point looks like." And I nodded. Because I felt it. For the first time, she was on the defense. And we were just getting started. By the second hearing, the sidewalk outside the courthouse was lined with folding chairs and thermoses. People I didn't recognize waved at me as I walked up the steps. One woman held a sign over her head in bright red letters, "We stand with Eleanor's niece." I stopped in my tracks. A man stepped out from the crowd. "You don't know me, but I live on Willow Court. Margaret tried to fine us for having wind chimes." "Wind chimes?" I asked. She said they were audibly aggressive. I almost laughed. "Thanks for coming." He nodded. "We're tired of being pushed around. Go get her." Inside, a local reporter with a press badge cornered me outside the courtroom doors. "You're becoming something of a symbol," she said. "Mind if I ask why you're fighting so hard for one piece of property?" I looked straight into the camera. "Because if they take this, they'll take everything that matters to us. This isn't just land. It's memory. It's legacy. My aunt died protecting it." She lowered her notepad. "That'll resonate." It did. By the next morning, the court clerk told me over 20 letters had arrived, handwritten, emailed, printed. One said, "Margaret threatened to tow my car for having a bumper sticker she didn't like." Another read, "She fined us for not trimming our hedge symmetrically. We just buried my wife." I sat in Caleb's office flipping through the stack, stunned. "They're lining up," he said. She ruled through fear. You gave them a reason to speak. I didn't ask for this. You didn't have to. Even Hank, the guy who wouldn't say 3 words to me before, showed up with a binder. Figured you might need this, he said, dropping it onto my porch. What is it? Every notice, fine, and photo I've kept since 2015. I knew it would come in handy someday. I opened it and stared at the tabs. You documented all of it? I like being thorough. And I hate bullies. Margaret's tight grip was slipping. Her tone in court got sharper. Her lawyer kept requesting delays. And still, more people came. Kids holding signs. Couples in lawn chairs. Retirees in HOA t-shirts crossed out with duct tape. For years, they'd been alone. Afraid. Silenced. Now they stood shoulder to shoulder. They weren't just watching my case. They were in it. And so was I, no longer alone. I couldn't breathe when the judge walked in. Final ruling in the matter of Thompson versus Maple Heights HOA, he said, voice calm and crisp. My fingers gripped the edge of the table. Caleb leaned in. Stay focused, he whispered. I nodded, eyes fixed on the bench. The court finds the original deed legally valid and binding. The documents submitted by the HOA have been determined to be fraudulent. Possession and rights to the property remain with the petitioner. I didn't move. I couldn't. The forged deed is hereby nullified. The court recommends immediate investigation into the actions of Margaret Ellison in connection with fraudulent conveyance and bribery of a public official. A gasp rippled through the room. I turned slowly. Margaret sat frozen. Her lawyer muttered something, but she wasn't listening. Her glare locked on me like she could will me into silence. The judge continued, Ms. Ellison is hereby removed from her position as HOA president effective immediately, pending criminal charges. She stood. You can't do this. I built this community. The judge didn't blink. You abused it. She turned to me, face tight with rage. You think this is over? I stood tall. No, I said, my voice clear. But I'm not afraid of you anymore. The bailiff stepped forward as she continued shouting. They'll regret siding with you. All of them. But no one followed her out. When I walked down the courthouse steps, the crowd erupted. Cheers. Applause. People clapping me on the back, handing me flowers, shaking my hand. Hank was near the bottom, his old ball cap in hand. Knew you'd do it. I smiled. Couldn't we done it alone? Mrs. Langford hugged me tight. Your aunt would be proud. That's when it hit me. I stepped aside, away from the noise. Leaned against the railing and let it happen, tears spilling, chest shaking. Not for the victory. Not for the land. For Eleanor. For everything they tried to take from her. From me. She kept it alive, I whispered. Even after death. Caleb found me there, handed me a water bottle. Media wants a statement. I wiped my face. Tell them I'm going home. He smiled. Back to your porch? To her porch. I looked out across the street, neighbors hugging, laughing, for the first time in years. Margaret's reign was over. But something more important had begun. I didn't win just a case. I reclaimed a legacy. And I wasn't done yet. I planted jasmine where the bulldozer had torn through the earth. The soil was stubborn, but so was I. I knelt by the garden bed, hands deep in dirt, breathing in that scent I hadn't smelled since I was 13. You'd hate how crooked that trellis is, I whispered, glancing toward the porch. But it's staying. The fence was rebuilt. The porch repaired. The house didn't groan at night anymore. It sighed. The neighborhood changed, too. Kids started riding their bikes down the street again. A couple of them waved as they zipped past the gate. One even shouted, "Hey! Thanks for saving the house." I smiled. It kind of saved me, too. Saturday morning, Mrs. Langford brought over cookies. "Still warm," she said, nudging them into my hands. "You always liked the ones with cinnamon. How do you remember that?" Eleanor wrote it down. Said, she always eats the cinnamon ones first. I swallowed hard. She remembered everything. She remembered you. By noon, a handful of neighbors were in the yard. Tommy dragged over lawn chairs. Hank offered to fix the birdhouse Eleanor nailed to the oak 20 years ago. "We could use a gathering place again," he said. "You mean, like, a real community?" He winked. "Exactly." The house filled with laughter that night. I watched from the porch, a plate on my lap, Jasmine swaying just behind me. Inside, her letters were framed above the fireplace, dozens of pages, handwritten and angry and honest. One line caught my eye every time: "I may be old, but I am not invisible." I whispered it out loud. "Neither am I." Later, I sat under the porch light, pen in hand, and wrote my first letter back. "Dear Eleanor. You were right. They tried to erase us. But we didn't let them. Not this time. Your garden's back. The birds came, too. And the jasmine, God, the jasmine's blooming again. The house feels full. So do I." I folded the page, tucked it in the drawer beneath her favorite teacup. Not for anyone to read. Just to be near her. This land, this house, this fight, it gave me more than a verdict. It gave me purpose. Legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's what you stand up for while you're still here. And now, I stand tall. For her. For me. For all of us.